We are tracking a windstorm today across the inland northwest, multiple facets along with it as well. So it's not just the wind. We're getting morning rain. There's heavy mountain snow over the Cascades and Lookout Pass. And we could even see a chance of thunderstorms by this afternoon, but the winds are definitely the priority and going to be the most responsible for any kind of damage or power outages later on today. So these are high wind warnings shaded in gold basically all across the inland northwest, including in Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, some wind advisories in northern Washington as well. So I'm expecting some minor tree damage and certainly a few power outages. In fact, we already have about 100+ people without power. Even as of this hour, we're still far from the peak wind gusts later on today. There will be strong crosswinds for anybody traveling, especially on highways and interstates, and that goes for the east-west and north-south highways. There's also heavy mountain snow that's already causing some backups over Snoqualmie Pass and Lookout Pass. So a lot going on, as you can see. But note this, most of the rain's going to be this morning. After about 9 o'clock, maybe just a few scattered showers and a chance for a thunderstorm or two around 12 or 1 o'clock during the early afternoon. But the strongest winds come after the rainfall into those afternoon hours between noon and 5 o'clock today. That is when we'll experience those most violent wind gusts overall. So here's the rainfall all across eastern Washington and northern Idaho. But you can already see the tail end of this line of showers. So this steady rain will come to an end. We'll see scattered showers, but then the winds are rushing in behind it. Here's the core of this windstorm, the low pressure area in the Pacific Ocean, and there's a lot of energy that's just guiding its way right into the Pacific Northwest. So that's where all the wind is coming from. Yes, it's going to shove out most of the rainfall, but the winds are going to be just so strong and severe during the afternoon hours. Gusts up to 60 miles per hour, basically anywhere where you see the deepest red shades, and that's right through the core of the Columbia Basin into the Spokane area overall. The breezy conditions do stay with us for tomorrow, but will be less violent and less severe. Still wind gusts at around 30 to 35 miles per hour on Tuesday. And then finally an outright calm day, 5 to 10 mile per hour winds by the time we get to Wednesday of this week. Now we take you to Future Tracker. There's that steady rain for the morning hours, pretty much coming to an end at around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, with just a few scattered showers right near the state line into northern Idaho, where you see some of these red spots. Is a chance for a quick clap of thunder or two, maybe a couple thunderstorm cells just popping up right as that cold front sweeps across the area. But then we just stay windy for the rest of the night tonight. And of course, you see that snow over the mountain passes, both over the Cascades and Lookout Pass. That could actually linger all the way into Tuesday. In fact, take a live look at these mountain pass cameras. You can see a little bit of a traffic backup over Lookout Pass right now as those road conditions just went from wet to now slushy because of that snow that's falling. So a very active and very windy day for today. As mentioned, still breezy for tomorrow. No mention of rain, just a few mountain snow showers left over on Tuesday, but a much calmer and definitely much warmer end to the week. We'll be back in the mid-60s for high temperatures on Thursday and Friday. This October has been one for the record books for the Pacific Northwest. Temperatures nearly 90 degrees in Seattle from this past weekend, hitting 88 on October 16th, 86 degrees in Portland as well, and almost just as impressive in Spokane, getting to 70 to 80 degrees so far every single day this month. But why has the weather been as warm as it is this late into the fall season? So let's dig deeper and show you the weather pattern responsible for this, known as a Rex block. This is the positioning, high pressure north of a low pressure area, or high over low. And what happens there is that it forces the jet stream in a ridging pattern, allowing it to get stuck in place because the winds are actually pressing up against it, preventing the typical west to east flow in the atmosphere. And if you're located directly under that high pressure area, as we have been, well, the weather ends up being nice, warm, and dry, typically for weeks, and at times can be months-long period, as we've seen so far recently. Now, that's the textbook example, and here's the current atmosphere in that positioning, high over low, ridging in the jet stream, but not a perfect textbook example. The low pressure areas are starting to break down and get picked up by the jet stream. When that happens, the ridge is going to flatten, and that west to east flow in the jet stream will once again resume, allowing for the next weather system to move into the area. And it will be drastic, from 70s and 80 degree weather back to
what is typical for the fall season. Lots of rain and mountain snow are likely for the upcoming weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all going to see widespread rain across the Pacific Northwest. And probably the most important weather factor upcoming is how much snow is going to fall across the Cascades. Early indications already for 2 to 3 feet of snow on some of those mountain peaks.
That Arctic cold front, or Siberian Express, has hit everyone in the country, or nearly everyone, with some incredibly cold weather. The wind chill alerts extend from North Florida all the way to Portland. And if you're wondering how far that expands, well, look for yourself. That's nearly 2,500 miles worth of wind chill advisories and warnings and watches from coast to coast. Temperature is not only below zero, but way below zero in a lot of locations across the inland Northwest and the Northwest in general. Currently sitting at -9 in Spokane and as cold as -19 in Pullman. We've had our fair share of -20s across the region. Just over my shoulder, you might see that Kalispell currently has a temperature of -32. I've seen as cold as -44 out of Bozeman early this morning. But like I mentioned, quite a few areas in northern and eastern Washington getting below -20 temperature-wise early this morning, including Pullman, -20, making the coldest day since 1996 there, as cold as -28 out of Republic. Most of these locations in northern Washington or far north Idaho, with a couple eastern Washington locations sprinkled in there. And then you factor in even just a 5-mile-per-hour wind out of the north and northeast, and that's putting wind chills to around -24 to close to -30 in a lot of these locations. So that's the feels like factor. If you were to stand outside in the cold and the wind, that's approximately how cold it feels like. And it is dangerous to be outside in this kind of weather, even for just a couple minutes. Hopefully it's just a sprint to the car to warm it up early on this morning for you. Wind chill warnings remain in effect until noon today. The wind chills could be at their most extreme 45 degrees below zero. They remain in effect until noon. At that point, we should see them maybe climbing above zero, at least at times for today. But this is the coldest weather we're going to get all week. Even high temperatures, single digits above zero, probably don't even get above zero until about 10, 11 or noon for today. After that, we'll start to turn the corner into at least some slightly warmer weather Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But that's going to come with more snow on Friday, possibly freezing rain for Friday and Saturday towards central and western Washington. So we start with winter weather advisories that have already been issued as of this morning. They're for Friday, though. The snow starts Friday morning, and we could get up to 4 inches of snow in a lot of these locations, calling for about 2 to 4 inches of snow to give it a range for Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, all areas along the Palouse. If you're just outside of that advisory area, you're probably looking at 1, 2, or 3 inches of snow. Still that powdery snow, easy to shovel, but can accumulate on the roadways pretty quickly overall. But the biggest concern across the Northwest is going to be the freezing rain. That's going to be hitting Seattle and Portland tomorrow on Friday, and we'll be moving into central Washington, the pink shaded areas that you see here, as early as Saturday morning, but likely for Saturday afternoon. So think Ritzville and Moses Lake. That'll be quite a huge concern for those that are trying to travel to the west side. Make sure to plan around that. Christmas Day is looking a lot drier, just a small chance of showers by then, but a very active weather pattern for the next week ahead. So it's just extremely cold for today. We get snow on Friday, and look what happens in the days after Christmas. A lot of rain, but at least temperatures do warm up to around 40 degrees. So expecting a lot of wet and slushy conditions by then. I want to cover the freezing rain in a bit more detail now. And the reason for this pattern is that when the warmer air is coming into play, it actually moves overhead and into the mid layers of the atmosphere first and not quite on the ground. So any of that snow melts before it hits the ground. But if temperatures are still in the 20s, well, then that rain just freezes on contact. And that's what causes the freezing rain. And that's going to be likely over Seattle and Portland on Friday and moving into central Washington during the day on Saturday. So again, be prepared to run into any kind of freezing rain impacts if you are traveling across the state for both Friday and Saturday before Christmas.
Thomas, this snow event is really a long one. It's like kind of like a marathon almost, it seems like.
Yeah, it's it's like the marathon runners who look like they're sprinting, but will just continue to go and go and go. And that's what the weather is doing right now. It's snowing at about 1 inch per hour in areas, and still expecting snow through noon or 1 p.m. in many areas of eastern Washington through the course of this morning. Winter storm warnings in effect not just today, but even into part of the day Thursday for eastern Washington and all of North Idaho. The expiration time does vary depending on where you are, but the heaviest and the bulk of the snow is falling this morning. Here's the latest on Doppler radar. The heaviest blue shades, which I know looks like it's about everywhere, is where the heaviest snow is currently falling. Looks like there was another band that was just moving into downtown Spokane. So again, the snowfall rates at about 1 inch per hour. That's so heavy that even a plow that comes through and clears the road will already start to see the snow accumulate even directly behind it. That's why those tire tracks get cleared up very quickly, because of how heavy and intense that snowfall is. Looks like it's lightening up out towards the Ritzville area just a little bit, but still the heaviest snow still coming down currently and will continue to do so through mainly this morning, but we forecast all the way through the end of the day on Thursday, 6 to 10 inches of snow, or about 8 inches, kind of the mid range of the forecast for Spokane, 10 to 16 inches of snow in Sandpoint, upwards of a foot of snow in some of these northern locations. One such report that we got from Elmer City, which is just north of Grand Coulee, already 10 to 12 inches of snow on the ground as of this morning. Big thanks to Jimmer for sending this photo through our text line. He said he's about to help out a lot of his neighbors by plowing the streets nearby him. Look at the ruler there, almost fully up to a foot of snow up in north central Washington. So the heaviest snow is falling right now and through about 1 o'clock, with a few exceptions like the Palouse expecting snow even later into the day today. Morning winds could be as strong as 30 miles per hour. High impact to travel, of course, as we're seeing outside already. Medium chance for power outages simply because of the volume of snow that we are expecting for today and perhaps part of the day on Thursday. Less of a wind event, but there is just so much snow, and some of the trees honestly still have some of their leaves on them. That would result in power outages if any of those branches do snap off. It's very rare for us to get tornadoes, especially in the inland northwest. The two tornadoes occurred just after 7 o'clock on that Friday night. The first one was just northeast of Airway Heights. The damage there, a lot of tree and power line damage. The second tornado occurred in eastern Spokane near the Dishman Hills area. That actually did go through an RV park, tipping over at least one trailer onto another. Now, not very classic in terms of the radar snapshot here. It's not a classic supercell thunderstorm. Instead, the tornadoes occurred on the leading edge of these thunderstorms that moved through the area at that time, all within a 30-minute span. This is a video from a Vista Stadium where the Spokane Indians play. That game canceled that day, and you can start to see the condensation funnel right about here, and it's starting to move across the area. The things that we're looking for, first of all, is that it's rotating, so that we know it's a funnel cloud and not just scud clouds, which can sometimes deceive our eyes and still frame pictures. But that is very convincing right there, looking towards the south and towards that Dishman Hills area. So that's great, but we don't know if it's exactly on the ground just based on one piece of video. So we also look at the damage and the wind damage that was done and around the same location at the same time. And this was the result around that trailer park that I mentioned earlier. This RV flipped completely on its side, which is actually quite impressive. It takes quite a bit of wind in order to do that. It isn't just some small amount of damage. So thinking that that could be winds around the 80 or even 90 mile per hour mark, which could make it a low end EF1. Now, the ratings as of Monday afternoon haven't been delivered just yet. The National Weather Service in Spokane still doing storm surveys, still waiting on some information, and that will likely be rated, both those tornadoes, later on this week. But I do think the Airway Heights tornado will be rated an EF0, but still with winds up to 85 miles per hour, which is rather impressive for what is the lowest category of tornado scaling that we have from the enhanced Fujita scale. Obviously, this goes 0 to 5, with EF5s being more than 200 mile per hour winds. But I do think between that 80 to 90 mile per hour mark for that East Spokane tornado is likely.